Jake Morrison stepped off the transport shuttle and looked around in wonder. The spaceport on Kepler 442b was unlike anything he had ever seen. Tall, elegant buildings stretched into the purple sky like twisted glass sculptures. Strange creatures walked past him on the smooth metal floors. Some had feathers, others had crystal skin that sparkled in the light, and a few looked like they were made of living water. The 17-year-old boy from Colorado adjusted his backpack and tried not to stare. He was the first human to ever attend Zenith Academy, and he wanted to make a good impression. His acceptance letter was still folded in his pocket. He had read it so many times that the words were burned into his memory. A tall, blue-skinned being approached him. It moved, like water flowing uphill, smooth and graceful. Jake recognized it from the pictures in his welcome packet. This was Principal Vexahai from the water world of Aquanus. "You must be Jake Morrison," the principal said. Its voice sounded like waves washing over rocks. "Welcome to Kepler 442b. I am Principal Vexahai of Zenith Academy." Jake smiled and extended his hand. "Nice to meet you, sir. Thank you for accepting me into your school." Principal Vexahai looked at Jake's outstretched hand with confusion. After a moment, it reached out with one of its own appendages and gently touched Jake's palm. The touch was cool and wet, like dipping his hand in a mountain stream. "Ah, yes. The human greeting ritual," Principal Vexahai said. "We studied your species' customs before your arrival. Please, follow me. We have much to discuss." They walked through the spaceport and out into the Academy's grounds. Jake had to bite his tongue to keep from gasping. The Academy looked like a fairy tale castle made of rainbow-colored crystal. Gardens filled with plants he didn't recognize surrounded the buildings. The gravity here was lighter than Earth's, making each step feel like he was bouncing slightly. "Our Academy hosts students from 12 different species," Principal Vexahai explained as they walked. "This is the first time we have accepted a student from what the galactic community calls a Deathworld." Jake's smile faltered a bit. "Deathworld? That sounds pretty harsh." "Earth is classified as a Class 9 Deathworld," the principal continued. "Your planet has extreme weather, dangerous animals, and gravity that would crush most of our students. The fact that your species not only survives there but thrives is quite remarkable." They entered the main building through doors that opened without touching them. The hallway was filled with the soft sound of alien conversations. Jake saw students who looked like walking trees, others who seemed to be made of light itself, and some that reminded him of the dragons from his favorite fantasy books. "I hope you understand the significance of your presence here," Principal Vexahai said, leading Jake to its office. "Many faculty members were concerned about accepting a human student. Your species has quite a reputation in the galactic community." Jake sat down in a chair that molded itself to fit his body. The office was decorated with what looked like living coral that glowed softly in different colors. "What kind of reputation?" Principal Vexahai settled behind its desk, which appeared to be carved from a single massive pearl. "Humans are known as warriors. Your species has something called wars where you fight each other. You eat the flesh of other creatures. You live on a planet where the very air can poison you, yet you breathe it without protection. Most species find these facts quite disturbing." "I guess when you put it that way, it does sound pretty scary," Jake admitted. "But most humans are peaceful. We don't go around fighting all the time. And we've learned to take care of our planet better in recent years." "That is what Earth's ambassadors told us," the principal said. "Still, we have strict policies here at Zenith Academy. We have had no violence of any kind for over 300 years. Our students come from peaceful worlds where conflict is resolved through discussion and meditation." Jake nodded eagerly. "I understand completely. I'm here to learn about other cultures and make friends. I promise I won't cause any trouble." Principal Vexahai studied Jake for a long moment. "I believe you are sincere, young human. However, I must ask you to be very careful about your behavior. Our students are not accustomed to beings with your physical capabilities. What might seem normal to you could be terrifying to them." "Physical capabilities?" Jake asked, confused. "According to our research, humans can lift objects many times their own body weight. You can run for great distances without stopping. Your bones can break and heal stronger than before. Your muscles grow, larger when damaged. These abilities are beyond the comprehension of most galactic species. Jake scratched his head. I mean, I work out and play sports, but I'm not exactly superhuman or anything. Perhaps not by human standards, Principal Vexhai said. But by our standards, you are quite extraordinary. Please remember this as you interact with your fellow students. After the meeting, a small student escort arrived to show Jake to his dormitory. The escort was unlike anything Jake had ever imagined. It looked like a person-shaped cluster of crystals that caught and reflected light in beautiful patterns. Each step it took created a soft chiming sound. I am Kixelar from Silica Prime, the crystal being said in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. I am your assigned roommate and cultural guide. Cool to meet you, Kixelar, Jake said. I'm Jake. Thanks for showing me around. Kixelar seemed to shrink back slightly when Jake spoke. You are much larger than I expected. The educational materials said humans were big, but seeing you in person is quite startling. Jake looked down at himself. He was about average height for a human teenager, maybe 5 feet 10 inches tall. Am I really that big compared to other students? Most students here are between 3 and 4 feet tall, Kixelar explained, leading Jake down a hallway lined with doors. The tallest species, the Trilaxians, reach about 5 feet. You are quite imposing. They stopped at a door marked with symbols Jake couldn't read. Kixelar touched the door with one crystalline finger, and it slid open. The room inside was split into 2 halves. One side had furniture that looked normal to Jake, though everything seemed slightly small. The other side looked like the inside of a geode, with crystal formations growing from the walls and ceiling. This is our room, Kixelar said. Your side has been equipped with furniture designed for human physiology. I hope it is acceptable. Jake set his backpack on the bed and looked around. Everything was functional, though the bed looked like it might be too short for him. This is great, thanks. I really appreciate you being willing to room with me. Kixelar's crystal surface flickered with different colors. I must admit, I was quite nervous about this assignment. My family was very concerned when they learned I would be living with a Deathworlder. What exactly did they tell you about humans? Jake asked, sitting carefully on the edge of his bed. Well, Kixelar said, settling onto what Jake assumed was its own bed, though it looked more like a crystal shelf. We were told that humans eat raw flesh, that you enjoy physical pain, and that you come from a world where everything tries to kill you. My grandmother said that humans can break rocks with their bare hands and run faster than our fastest vehicles. Jake couldn't help but laugh. Your grandmother sounds like she has quite an imagination. I promise I'm not going to eat you or break any rocks. I'm just a regular teenager who likes basketball and video games. What are basketball and video games? Kixelar asked. Jake realized this was going to be a very interesting cultural exchange. Well, basketball is a sport where you try to throw a ball through a hoop, and video games are electronic entertainment. What do you do for fun on Silica Prime? We sing to make our crystals grow in beautiful patterns, Kixelar said, and we solve mathematical puzzles using light refraction. Very peaceful activities. Jake nodded, trying to imagine spending his free time growing crystals with songs. That sounds really cool. Maybe you could teach me sometime. Kixelar's surface brightened with what Jake hoped was happiness. I would like that very much. And perhaps you could show me these basketball and video games, assuming they are not too violent for my constitution. As Jake unpacked his belongings, he told Kixelar about life on Earth. He described mountains and oceans, snow and rain, dogs and cats. Kixelar listened with fascination and growing horror. You swim in vast bodies of water with dangerous creatures? Kixelar asked. And you climb mountains where you could fall to your death? Well, when you put it that way, it does sound pretty extreme, Jake admitted. But it's fun. The danger makes it exciting. Kixelar's crystalline form flickered rapidly. Humans truly are remarkable creatures. To find enjoyment in mortal peril is beyond my understanding. That evening, Jake joined his roommate for dinner in the Academy's main dining hall. The room was filled with students from dozens of species, all chatting quietly and eating foods Jake didn't recognize. When he entered the room, conversation stopped. Every alien eye turned to look at him. Jake felt his cheeks burn with embarrassment as he followed Kixelar to the food service area. Whispers followed them across the room. He caught fragments of conversations in languages he didn't understand, but the tone was unmistakable, fear mixed with curiosity. Jake's first week of classes at Zenith Academy was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The classrooms were beautiful, with walls that changed colors based on the subject being taught. The desks floated in the air and adjusted to each student's height and body type. But it was the lessons themselves that truly amazed him. In history class, Professor Melterra, a being that looked like a walking flower with dozens of petals for a head, taught about the peaceful development of galactic civilization. Jake raised his hand during the first lesson. "Professor, when you talk about the Great Expansion, how did different species handle territorial disputes?" Jake asked. The flower-like professor's petals wilted slightly. "Territorial disputes? I'm afraid I don't understand the question." No, when two species wanted the same planet or resources, did they fight over it?" A shocked silence filled the classroom. Jake looked around and saw that every alien student was staring at him with wide eyes. Several had moved their desks further, away from his. "Young human," Professor Melterra said carefully. "Civilized species do not fight over resources. We share and cooperate. The concept of organized violence between groups is unknown to most galactic cultures." Jake felt his face turn red. "Oh, I'm sorry. On Earth we have this thing called war where different countries or groups fight each other. I thought maybe other species did that too." A student who looked like a small dragon covered in blue scales raised a trembling claw. "Humans actually fight each other? On purpose?" "Well, yeah, but we're trying to do it less now," Jake said, attempting to explain. "We've learned that talking is better than fighting." The dragon student fainted and had to be carried out by two classmates. Professor Melterra's petals were now completely closed. "Perhaps we should move on to a different topic. Let's discuss the peaceful trading agreements of the Third Age." Biology class was even worse. Dr. Quintel was a tall, mantis-like creature with 4 arms and compound eyes. The classroom looked like the inside of a giant tree, with living walls that pulsed gently. Jake thought it was beautiful until the lesson began. "Today we will study comparative anatomy across species," Dr. Quintel announced, its voice clicking like insects in summer. "Each species has evolved unique adaptations for their homeworlds." The doctor showed images of different alien anatomies on a floating screen. Jake was fascinated by how different each species was. When Dr. Quintel showed a picture of human anatomy, several students gasped. "The human skeletal system is quite remarkable," Dr. Quintel said. "Notice how dense and thick the bones are. This is necessary because humans come from a high-gravity world." A student who looked like a jellyfish floating in a bubble of water raised a tentacle. "Doctor, is it true that human bones can break and still function?" "Actually," Jake said, trying to be helpful, "broken bones heal stronger than they were before. And if you exercise a lot, your muscles get bigger and stronger too." The jellyfish student's bubble began to shake violently. "They grow stronger from damage?" "Yeah, it's pretty cool," Jake continued, not noticing the growing panic in the room. "And humans can lose fingers or even whole arms and legs and still survive. Some people even get artificial replacements that work almost as well as the real thing." 2 more students fainted. Dr. Quintel's compound eyes were spinning in different directions, which Jake would later learn was a sign of extreme distress. "Mr. Morrison," the doctor said in a shaky voice, "perhaps you could tell us about human healing abilities?" "Sure," Jake said cheerfully. "We can heal from cuts, bruises, broken bones, burns, and lots of other injuries. Oh, and we can donate blood to help other humans, and we can even donate organs like kidneys and parts of our liver." "You remove parts of your bodies and give them to others?" A crystalline student whispered in horror. "Only to save lives," Jake explained. "The liver can grow back, and we have 2 kidneys but only need 1 to survive." The class erupted in panicked chittering, clicking, and what Jake could only describe as alien screaming. Half the students fled the classroom. Dr. Quintel had to sit down and fan itself with all four arms. Class dismissed, the doctor announced weakly. Mr. Morrison, please stay after class. When the room had cleared, Dr. Quintel looked at Jake, with what might have been concern. Young human, I think you need to understand something. Most species in the galaxy are quite fragile compared to your kind. What seems normal to you is absolutely terrifying to us. I was just trying to be educational, Jake said, feeling terrible about scaring his classmates. I know you meant no harm, Dr. Quintel replied. But perhaps in the future, you could be more careful about how you describe human biology. Many of our students come from worlds where losing even a small amount of body fluid can be fatal. Jake nodded sadly. He was starting to understand why the other students were afraid of him. The only bright spot in his week was meeting Zara Velti. She was a bird-like student from the cloud cities of Nimbus, with beautiful silver feathers and wings that shimmered like oil on water. Unlike the other students, she didn't run away when Jake approached her in the library. You're the human everyone is talking about, she said in a voice like wind through trees. Yeah, that's me, Jake said, sitting down carefully at her table. I'm Jake, and I promise I'm not as scary as everyone thinks. Zara tilted her head, studying him with bright golden eyes. I've been reading about your species. Is it true that humans climb mountains just for enjoyment? Jake pulled out his tablet and showed her some pictures from his hiking trips back home. These are from the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. That's where I'm from. Zara stared at the images, in amazement and horror. You climbed up those jagged rock formations without wings? Humans don't have wings, Jake said. We use ropes and special equipment to stay safe. But why would you risk death for no reason? Zara asked, genuinely puzzled. Jake thought about how to explain it. It's hard to describe. There's something amazing about standing on top of a mountain and seeing the world spread out below you. It makes you feel alive and connected to everything. Zara was quiet for a moment. On Nimbus, we are born in the clouds. We never touch the ground. The idea of deliberately going to dangerous places is completely foreign to us. What do you do for fun on your world? Jake asked. We dance on the wind currents and create cloud sculptures with our wing beats, Zara said. Very peaceful activities. We would never dream of deliberately putting ourselves in danger. Jake showed her more pictures from Earth, videos of people surfing, skiing, and rock climbing. With each image, Zara's feathers ruffled more with distress. Humans are truly the strangest creatures in the galaxy, she said finally. You seek out danger and call it fun. I guess we do, Jake admitted. But we also create beautiful art, write amazing stories, and take care of each other. We're not just about danger and fighting. Zara studied his face carefully. You seem kind. Not at all like the monster the other students describe. I'm just a regular teenager, Jake said. I like pizza, video games, and hanging out with friends. The same stuff most kids like, I think. What is pizza? Zara asked. Jake spent the next hour describing Earth food, which led to another cultural misunderstanding when he mentioned that humans eat plants and animals. Zara was horrified to learn that humans were omnivores. You consume other living creatures? She asked, her feathers standing up in alarm. Well, most animals do that, Jake said. It's pretty normal in nature. Not where I come from, Zara said. We absorb nutrients from the moisture in clouds. The idea of consuming solid matter, especially from other living beings, is quite disturbing. Despite her shock at human dietary habits, Zara continued to sit with Jake. She seemed genuinely curious about his species, even if she found many human customs terrifying. I don't understand how your species survived long enough to develop technology, she said one day. From what you've told me, your world is constantly trying to kill you. I guess we're pretty stubborn, Jake said with a laugh. When something tries to kill us, we figure out how to kill it back, or at least avoid it. And you enjoy this constant struggle? Some people do, Jake said. Others prefer safer activities. Humans are pretty diverse in what they like to do. Word. of Jake's conversations with Zara spread through the school. Some students were shocked that she would willingly spend time with the dangerous human. Others were curious about what she was learning. One day, Jake tried to help a student who had dropped their books in the hallway. The student was a small, slug-like being from the marsh world of Bogspire. When Jake bent down to pick up the scattered materials, the student screamed and slithered away as fast as possible. "I was just trying to help," Jake called after the fleeing student. A group of crystalline students who had witnessed the event began whispering rapidly among themselves. By the end of the day, the story had grown into Jake attacking a defenseless student and threatening to consume their study materials. Principal Vexhigh called Jake to the office that evening. "Mr. Morrison, we need to discuss your behavior," the principal said, its water-like form more agitated than usual. "What did I do wrong?" Jake asked, genuinely confused. "Several students have filed complaints about aggressive behavior. They say you move too quickly, speak too loudly, and make threatening gestures." Jake had been at Zenith Academy for 2 weeks when he received his physical education schedule. He was excited about the class because he missed playing sports and working out. Back on Earth, he had been on his high school basketball team and enjoyed running track. He hoped that gym class might be a way to connect with other students through shared physical activities. The gymnasium was not what Jake expected. When he walked through the doors, he found himself in a room that looked more like a spa than a place for exercise. The floors were covered with soft, cushioned material that felt like walking on clouds. Gentle music played from hidden speakers, and the air smelled like flowers. Soft lights changed colors slowly from blue to green to purple. Around the room, Jake saw equipment he didn't recognize. There were floating platforms that moved very slowly through the air. Strange metal rings hung from the ceiling, but they were only a few inches off the ground. What looked like weights were scattered around the room. But when Jake picked one up, it was lighter than a feather. The other students in the class were already there, doing what Jake could only describe as very slow stretching. They moved like they were underwater, raising their arms and legs in careful, deliberate motions. Some students were lying on soft mats, apparently meditating. Jake looked around for the teacher and saw a large, slug-like creature slowly making its way across the room. This had to be Coach Zelnara from the marsh world of Bogspire. The coach looked like a giant snail without a shell, with eye stalks that moved independently and skin that glistened with moisture. "Ah, you must be the human student," Coach Zelnara said in a voice that sounded like bubbles popping. "Welcome to physical wellness class. Please find a mat and begin your relaxation exercises." Jake looked at the other students who were moving in slow motion. A crystalline student was carefully lifting one arm over its head, taking nearly a full minute to complete the motion. A small dragon-like being was lying on its side, breathing so slowly that Jake had to watch carefully to see if it was still alive. "Is this the whole workout?" Jake asked. "Don't we do any running or jumping or lifting weights?" Every student in the room stopped moving and stared at him. Coach Zelnara's eye stalk swiveled to focus on Jake with what looked like confusion and horror. "Running?" the coach asked. "Jumping? Young human. This is a place of peace and gentle wellness. We do not engage in violent physical activities." "But exercise isn't violent," Jake said. "It's fun and it keeps you healthy. What you call exercise, we call dangerous self-harm," Coach Zelnara explained. "Now please find a mat and join the meditation circle." Jake looked around the room again. He spotted what looked like a rack of weights in the corner and walked over to investigate. The weights were made of some kind of foam material and were painted to look like real weights, but each one weighed about as much as a piece of bread. "Excuse me, Coach," Jake said, holding up one of the foam weights. "Do you have any real weights? These are really light." Coach Zelnara's entire body began to tremble. "Those are our heaviest resistance training tools. Each one weighs nearly 2 ounces. Very dangerous if used improperly." Jake stared at the foam weight in his hand. 2 ounces was lighter than his cell phone. "I think there might be some mistake. On Earth, I usually lift weights that are 50 or 100 pounds. 50 pounds? Coach Zelnara whispered. "That's impossible. No living creature could survive lifting such massive objects." To demonstrate that the weights were safe, Jake casually picked up the entire rack of foam weights with one hand and lifted it over his head.
See? These are really light.
The effect was immediate and dramatic. Half the students in the class screamed and ran for the exits. The crystalline student's body flickered rapidly with panicked light patterns. The small dragon fainted and fell over sideways. Coach Zelnara made a sound like a deflating balloon and collapsed into a puddle of terrified slime on the floor. "Wait, come back," Jake called to the fleeing students. "I was just showing you that. They're safe." But the remaining students were already gone. Jake was alone in the gymnasium with an unconscious dragon and a coach who had literally melted from fear. Jake gently set down the weight rack and knelt beside Coach Zelnara's puddle. "Form, are you okay? I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to scare you." It took several minutes for the coach to reform into a solid shape. When Zelnara finally pulled itself back together, its eye stalks were shaking. "What are you?" the coach whispered. That display of strength was beyond anything in our scientific understanding. "I'm just a regular human teenager," Jake said. "This is normal for my species. I'm actually not even that strong compared to some humans." "Not that strong?" Coach Zelnara's voice cracked like breaking glass. "You lifted our entire weight training system with one appendage." Jake looked at the foam weight rack. "But it only weighs like a pound total, maybe less." "A full pound of resistance equipment lifted overhead," the coach muttered. "The physics should have been impossible." The small dragon student began to wake up, making confused chirping sounds. Jake moved to help, but Coach Zelnara quickly slithered between them. "Please don't move any closer," the coach said. "Rextar has a very delicate constitution. The shock of seeing your strength display may have caused permanent psychological damage." "I was just going to see if he's okay," Jake said. "Your very presence is causing stress to our students," Coach Zelnara said. "Perhaps it would be best if you waited in the hallway while I tend to Rextar." Jake felt terrible as he left the gymnasium. He had only been trying to show that the weights were safe, but somehow he had terrified everyone instead. He sat on a bench in the hallway and put his head in his hands. "Having trouble with physical education?" a familiar voice asked. Jake looked up to see Zara Velthi walking toward him, her silver feathers catching the light from the hallway windows. "I think I just destroyed my gym class," Jake said miserably. "Half the students ran away screaming, and I accidentally made the teacher faint." Zara sat down beside him, keeping a careful distance. "What did you do?" "I picked up some weights to show they were safe," Jake explained, "but everyone acted like I had just lifted a car or something." "How much did the weights weigh?" Zara asked. "Maybe a pound total. They were made of foam." Zara's feathers ruffled with surprise. "Jake, most students here can barely lift a few ounces. What you did would be like me watching you casually lift a small building." "But it was just foam," Jake protested. "To you, yes. To them, you just demonstrated the strength of a living earthquake." Jake groaned. "I can't do anything right here. Every time I try to be normal, I end up scaring someone." "You're not trying to be normal," Zara said gently. "You're trying to be human normal, but human normal is absolutely terrifying to the rest of us." Before Jake could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the academy. Red lights flashed in the hallways, and an automated voice began speaking in several alien languages. "What's happening?" Jake asked. Zara listened to the announcement, her golden eyes growing wide with concern. "There's been an incident in the gymnasium. They're saying a dangerous predator attacked students during physical education class." "A dangerous predator?" Jake felt his stomach drop. "They're talking about me, aren't they?" "I'm afraid so," Zara said. "The automated system must have been triggered when the students fled the gymnasium. Security drones began flying through the hallways, their lights scanning for threats. Jake watched them nervously as they approached. "Student identification required," one of the drones announced in a mechanical voice. "Please remain stationary for scanning." The drone hovered in front of Jake, its sensors examining him from multiple angles. After a moment, its lights changed from yellow to flashing red. "Dangerous biological entity detected," the drone announced. "Class 9 Deathworld predator identified, initiating containment protocols." More drones arrived, surrounding Jake and Zara. Their mechanical voices created a chorus of warnings about dangerous predators and containment procedures. "I'm not a predator," Jake said to the nearest drone. "I'm a student here." "Biological entity shows signs of extreme physical capability," the drone replied. "Recent incident in gymnasium confirms threat assessment. Please comply with containment protocols." Zara stood up, placing herself between Jake and the drones. "This student is not a threat. I can vouch for his peaceful intentions." "Avian entity. Advised to maintain safe distance from Deathworld predator," a drone announced. "Containment team en route." Within minutes, the hallway filled with Academy security personnel. Most were species Jake had never seen before, wearing what looked like protective suits made of energy fields. They carried devices that hummed with power and kept their distance from Jake. "Human student Jake Morrison," the lead security officer announced through a speaker in its suit. "You are to come with us for emergency evaluation." "What did I do wrong?" Jake asked. "I was just trying to participate in gym class." "Multiple students reported a violent display of predatory behavior," the officer said. "Coach Zelnara was found in a state of defensive dissolution. Student Rextar required medical attention for shock trauma." Jake looked at Zara helplessly. "I just picked up some foam weights." "The weight training equipment rack weighs 1.3 pounds total," the security officer said. Jake sat in a small room that the Academy called a containment cell. The walls were made of some kind of energy field that glowed softly blue. There was a chair that adjusted to his size and a small table with water and what looked like alien crackers. He had been there for 3 hours, waiting for the emergency faculty meeting to decide his fate. Through the energy wall, Jake could see security drones floating back and forth in the hallway. Occasionally, faculty members would walk by and peer at him through the barrier. They whispered to each other in their alien languages, and Jake didn't need a translator to know they were talking about how dangerous he was. The door finally opened, and Principal Vexhai flowed into the room, followed by several faculty members Jake recognized from his classes. Dr. Quintel was there, along with Professor Meltara and Coach Zelnara, who still looked somewhat wobbly from the earlier incident. "Jake Morrison," Principal Vexhai said, its voice more formal than usual. "We need to discuss what happened in the gymnasium today." "I already told the security team," Jake said tiredly. "I was just trying to show that the weights were safe. I didn't mean to scare anyone." Dr. Quintel stepped forward, all 4 of its arms crossed. "Mr. Morrison, you lifted equipment that weighs more than most of our students can carry. You demonstrated strength that we classify as potentially lethal to our species." "But they were foam weights," Jake protested. "They barely weighed anything." "To you, perhaps," Professor Meltara said. "Its flower petals wilted with stress. But to us, what you did was like watching a natural disaster in action." Coach Zelnara made a gurgling sound that Jake had learned was the species' equivalent of nervous laughter. "The human lifted our entire resistance training system with one appendage. The physics still don't make sense to me." Principal Vexhai settled into a chair that formed itself from the floor. "Jake, we must ask ourselves whether a being with your capabilities can safely remain at our academy. The safety of our students is our primary concern." Jake felt his heart sink. "Are you expelling me?" "That is what we are here to determine," the principal said. "However, before we make our decision, there are others who wish to speak on your behalf." The door opened again, and to Jake's surprise, Kixler entered the room. The crystalline being was glowing brighter than usual, its surface flickering with rapid patterns of light. "I request permission to address this hearing," Kixler said in its chiming voice. "Mr. Kixler, you are not required to testify," Principal Vexhai said. "As Mr. Morrison's roommate, you have been exposed to considerable danger." "That is exactly why I must speak," Kixler replied. "I have lived with Jake Morrison for 2 weeks. I have observed his behavior more closely than anyone else in this academy." Dr. Quintel's compound eyes focused on the crystal student. "Please, proceed." Kixler turned toward the faculty panel, his surface shimmering with what Jake had learned were patterns of determination. "When I first learned I would be rooming with a human, I was terrified. My family expected me to request a transfer immediately. They were certain the Deathworlder would crush me in my sleep. or consume me for nutrients. Several faculty members shifted uncomfortably at this description. But that is not what happened, Kixler continued. Jake Morrison has been nothing but gentle and considerate. He moves carefully around my crystal formations. He speaks quietly when I am trying to rest. When I accidentally broke a piece of my growth structure, he helped me repair it with a delicacy that amazed me. Jake remembered that incident. Kixler had been showing off a new crystal pattern when part of it snapped off. Jake had carefully helped position the broken piece so Kixler could regrow the connection. It had taken 2 hours of patient work. Furthermore, Kixler said, Jake has never shown aggression toward me despite having the physical ability to destroy me instantly. He asks permission before touching anything in our shared space. He has helped me reach high shelves without being asked. He has opened containers that were too difficult for me to manage. Professor Meltara's petals perked up slightly. You're saying the human has been helpful? More than helpful, Kixler replied. He has been kind. When I was homesick, he showed me pictures of Earth's mountains and explained how crystals form in caves. When I struggled with mathematics homework, he tutored me using methods that made the concepts clear. Coach Zelnara made a bubbling sound of confusion. But his display of strength in the gymnasium was clearly threatening behavior. Was it? Kixler asked. Or was it simply a demonstration of normal human capability? Jake has told me that on Earth, children his age regularly lift objects weighing hundreds of pounds during their exercise routines. What we saw as a threatening display was merely a human teenager doing what comes naturally to his species. The door opened once more and Zara Velthi flew into the room. Her silver feathers were ruffled with agitation, and her golden eyes were bright with determination. I also request permission to speak, she announced. Principal Vexhai looked surprised. Miss Velthi, you were not summoned to this hearing. I was there when the security drones arrested Jake, Zara said. I have spent considerable time with him over the past 2 weeks. I believe I have valuable testimony to offer. Dr. Quintel gestured with 2 of its arms. Please proceed. Zara settled onto a perch that extended from the wall. Like Kixler, I was initially terrified of Jake. My species has no natural predators, and the concept of a creature with his physical capabilities was beyond my understanding. She paused, looking directly at Jake. But Jake has shown me something I never expected from a Deathworlder. He has shown me restraint. Restraint? Professor Meltara asked. Every day, Jake chooses not to use his strength, Zara explained. He could easily dominate every interaction, force his way through any situation, take anything he wanted. But he doesn't. He waits patiently when speaking with slower species. He moves carefully to avoid accidentally bumping into smaller students. He has never raised his voice even when frustrated. Jake felt a warm feeling in his chest as Zara spoke. He hadn't realized that anyone had noticed his efforts to be gentle. But what about his violent tendencies? Coach Zelnara asked. His species practices something called war. Yes, they do, Zara said. And that makes Jake's peaceful behavior even more remarkable. He comes from a species that knows how to fight, yet he chooses not to. He has the strength to be a tyrant, yet he chooses to be a friend. Dr. Quintel was making notes on a floating tablet. These are interesting observations, but they don't address the fundamental safety concerns. Actually, they do, a new voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned to see Dr. Velnar, the Academy's chief psychologist, entering the room. The doctor was a tall, ethereal being that looked like it was made of flowing mist. I have been reviewing the security footage and witness statements from today's incident, Dr. Velnar said. I have also been studying human psychology and behavior patterns since Mr. Morrison's arrival. The doctor floated to the center of the room. What we witnessed today was not predatory behavior. It was a cultural misunderstanding of massive proportions. Explain. Principal Vexhai requested. Humans evolved on a world where physical strength was necessary for survival, Dr. Velnar said, but they also evolved complex social mechanisms to control that strength. Mr. Morrison's behavior demonstrates something remarkable. A being with overwhelming physical advantage who has been trained from birth to use that advantage responsibly. The doctor projected a holographic display showing footage from the gymnasium. Watch carefully. When Mr. Morrison lifts the weight rack, observe his body language. He moves slowly and deliberately. He makes eye contact with Coach Zelnara before acting. He explains what he is doing. These are the behaviors of someone trying to communicate safety, not threat. Jake watched the footage and realized Dr. Velnar was right. Even in that moment, he had been trying to be careful and explanatory. Furthermore, Dr. Velnar continued, consider what Mr. Morrison did not do. He did not throw the weights. He did not make sudden movements. When students began to panic, he immediately set down the equipment and tried to help. These are not the actions of a predator. Professor Meltara's petals were slowly opening. You're suggesting that what we interpreted as threatening behavior was actually an attempt at communication? Precisely, Dr. Velnar said. Mr. Morrison was trying to demonstrate that the equipment was safe. His methods were inappropriate for our context, but his intentions were clearly peaceful. Dr. Quintel uncrossed its arms. But surely the risk remains. His physical capabilities could still pose a danger. Could they? Dr. Velnar asked. Mr. Morrison has been at this academy for 2 weeks. In that time, he has never once used his strength inappropriately. He has consistently chosen gentleness over force, patience over aggression. Is this not exactly the kind of being we want in our academic community? Kixelar's surface brightened with agreement. Dr. Velnar speaks truth. Jake's strength is matched by his kindness. We should not fear him for what he could do, but appreciate him for what he chooses to do. Zara spread her wings in a gesture Jake had learned indicated strong agreement. A species that can choose peace despite having the ability to wage war is exactly the kind of species we should be learning from. 6 months had passed since the gymnasium incident, and Zenith Academy looked very different from the place Jake had first entered. The biggest change was in the gymnasium itself, which had been completely redesigned to accommodate students with different physical capabilities. The new facility had 3 separate areas. The first was the original Gentle Wellness Center for species that preferred meditation and slow stretching. The second was a moderate activity zone for students who wanted to try slightly more challenging exercises. The third was what everyone called the Deathworlder section, though it was really just a basic gym by Earth standards. Jake stood in the doorway of the new gymnasium, watching his fellow students participate in activities that would have been unimaginable 6 months ago. In the Wellness Center, crystalline students practiced their traditional slow movements alongside several new human exchange students who had arrived over the past few months. In the moderate zone, Zara was teaching flying techniques to students from other species while they taught her about ground-based activities. But it was the Deathworlder section that made Jake most proud. Rextar, the small dragon student who had fainted during the original incident, was now lifting weights that were almost a full pound each. For his species, this was like a human lifting a small car, and he was beaming with pride at his accomplishment. Jake, come help me with this, called Coach Zelnara from across the room. Jake walked over to where the coach was working with a group of students who were learning what they called human-style exercises. The coach had overcome its initial terror of Jake and now worked closely with him to develop safe training programs for different species. Show them the push-up again, Coach Zelnara requested. But remember to move slowly so they can see each part of the movement. Jake got down on the floor and demonstrated a single push-up, taking almost a minute to complete the motion. The watching students observed carefully, taking notes on their floating tablets. Several of them were working up to attempting modified versions using specialized equipment. The key is to start very small, Jake explained to the group. Even humans don't start with full push-ups. We build up slowly over time. A crystalline student raised a shimmering appendage. Jake, is it true that young human children can perform these movements? Some can, Jake said. But remember, we've been doing them our whole lives. You're starting as adults, so it's different for you. The student's surface flickered with what Jake had learned was amazement. Your species truly is remarkable. After the gym session, Jake walked to his next assignment, the Interspecies Friendship Club that he had helped establish 3 months earlier. The club met in a large common room that had been redesigned to accommodate the needs of all member species. There were perches for flying species, crystal growth chambers for silicon-based beings, and even a small pool for aquatic students. When Jake entered the room, he found it buzzing with activity. Kixelar was in one corner, teaching a group of students how to create music using crystal resonance. The sounds they produced were hauntingly beautiful, like wind chimes mixed with whale songs. Several human students were learning the technique, though their attempts were much less refined than those of the natural crystal beings. Zara was leading another group in aerial movement exercises. She had created a special harness system that allowed non-flying species to experience limited flight. A brave human student named Lisa was currently suspended in the harness, laughing with delight as Zara guided her through basic flying maneuvers. "Jake, you're just in time," called Dr. Velnar from the center of the room. The psychologist had become the faculty advisor for the club and was working with a mixed group of students on cross-cultural communication exercises. "What are we working on today?" Jake asked. "Perspective translation," Dr. Velnar explained. Each species is describing the same event from their cultural viewpoint. Today's topic is the concept of competition. Jake joined the circle where students from 8 different species were discussing their understanding of competitive activities. The conversation was fascinating and sometimes confusing. On my world, we compete by seeing who can grow the most. "Beautiful crystal formations," Kixelar was saying. "The goal is to inspire others with your artistry." "We compete through aerial dances," Zara added. "The most graceful flyer leads the migration routes." A student from the plant-like Verdanian species spoke next. "Competition is foreign to us. We succeed when the entire garden thrives together." When it was Jake's turn, he thought carefully about how to explain human competition. Humans compete in many ways. Sometimes it's about being the fastest or strongest, but the best competitions are really about pushing yourself to be better than you were before. We compete to grow. "But don't humans sometimes hurt each other during competition?" asked a small aquatic student floating in a mobile water tank. "Sometimes," Jake admitted, "but we have rules and safety measures. The goal isn't to hurt anyone. The goal is to test your limits and improve." Dr. Velnar made notes on a floating tablet. These different perspectives on competition reflect the core values of each species. Understanding these differences helps us communicate more effectively. After the club meeting, Jake headed to his favorite new class, Galactic Diplomacy, taught by Ambassador Trixwell, a wise being from the ancient ethereal species. The class had been created specifically because of the success of the human exchange program, and Jake was one of the first students to enroll. "Today we'll discuss the concept of strength and diplomacy," Ambassador Trixwell announced as the class settled into their adaptive seats. "Mr. Morrison, would you share your insights on this topic?" Jake had learned to love these discussions. "I think true strength in diplomacy comes from restraint. It's easy to use force when you have it. It's much harder to choose patience and understanding." "Elaborate on this concept," the ambassador requested. "Well, humans are physically stronger than most galactic species," Jake said. "We could probably force our way into agreements or intimidate others into doing what we want. But that wouldn't create real friendship or lasting peace. It would just create fear and resentment." A student from the insectoid hive species clicked its mandibles in agreement. "The human approach to strength is paradoxical. They possess great physical power but choose to apply it minimally. This is what makes them effective diplomats," added a Trilaxian student. "Their restraint demonstrates trustworthiness." Ambassador Trixwell glowed with approval. "Mr. Morrison has identified a key principle of successful diplomacy. The strongest position is often the one that chooses not to use all available power." After classes ended, Jake returned to his dormitory room, which had become something of a cultural center for the human exchange students. When he opened the door, he found Kixelar working on a new crystal formation, while 3 other human students sat around the room doing homework. "How was diplomacy class?" Kixelar asked without looking up from its crystal work. "Really good," Jake said, settling at his desk. "We talked about how strength and gentleness can work together in negotiations." "You've become quite the philosopher since arriving here," Kixler observed, its surface glowing with gentle humor. I guess I have, Jake admitted. Living here has made me think about things I never considered before. One of the other human students, a girl named Emma who had arrived 2 months ago, looked up from her homework. Jake, I wanted to thank you, again, for preparing the way for the rest of us. When I arrived, the other students were curious instead of terrified. That's because of the work you did. Jake felt a warm glow of pride. It wasn't just me. Kixlar and Zara and Dr. Velnar and lots of others helped change how people think about humans. Still, Emma said, you were the first. That took real courage. Soft chime indicated incoming communication on Jake's personal device. He opened it to find a message from Principal Vexhai requesting his presence in the office. Jake gathered his things and headed to the administrative building, wondering what the principal wanted to discuss. When he arrived at the office, Jake found Principal Vexhai working with several holographic displays showing data about the Academy's exchange programs. Jake, please sit down, the principal said. I have some exciting news to share with you. Jake settled into his chair. What's going on? The Galactic Educational Consortium has been reviewing our exchange program, Principal Vexhai explained. The success we've had integrating human students has exceeded all expectations. The principal gestured to one of the holographic displays, which showed statistics about student performance, cultural integration scores, and incident reports. Not only have there been no major incidents since the gymnasium situation, the principal continued, but academic performance across all species has improved. Students are more curious, more willing to take intellectual risks, and more collaborative in their approach to learning. Jake studied the data with interest. That's great news. Indeed it is, Principal Vexhai said, which is why the consortium has decided to expand the program dramatically. We're going to establish human exchange opportunities at 50 academies. Across the galaxy, Jake's eyes widened. 50 academies?